Hello, and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 113. My guest in this episode is Kim Karr, co-founder and executive director of I Can Help, Digital for Good. And this is a student program constitutive of about 300 students nationwide and in over 4 countries and in 20 states. And we're going to find out about I Can Help in this conversation with Kim. And this is a 2-part conversation, and I will be speaking in the second part with Anvita Ambardekar and Amber Flores. And Anvita is a intern leader, and Amber is a intern mentor. So this will all make sense if you listen to the conversations and take part in it. But I had a really good conversation with Kim. I will say that there's some content there that is sensitive, if you will. It's about abuse, it's about online bullying, and some of the dark, shadowy things that go on there. So I will say that in this first conversation with Kim, that could be an issue if you're sensitive. The other part 2 is not going to have that. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I'd like to welcome Kim Karr to the IdeaCast interview series, and looking forward to an informative conversation, one that I think I take very seriously, but I think is also very inspirational, the matters that we are going to discuss. So Kim, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, Justin, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad our student Anvita found you. That's amazing.
Yes, Anvita and I had a wonderful pre-meet conversation. And again, as I told you before we hit record, that I watched the Digital for Good Summit, and it's a Titanic production, but it's really rich, and I'll actually have that down in the description field. And to the YouTube audience, welcome to you all. And speaking of description fields, there will be lots of good information on icanhelp.net, Digital for Good. All the things that we're going to be covering here will be available to you in that description field. So Kim, I guess I'd like to start with sort of a classic foray into a conversation, and let's find out about you and maybe a career bio, or however you want to present yourself as getting to know you. And then let's go into the provenance of icanhelp.net and what you all are doing, the amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah. So my background is in education. I taught the fun age of middle schoolers for 13 years. So shout out to your former awkward middle school self. I'm sure you remember them quite well.
Yes.
And so when I was teaching for 13 years, I taught PE and leadership, so like student council. I kept getting students come to me with like all kinds of fake pages and hate pages and really passive aggressive text messages. We actually had a huge nude case in our area go up where about 35 middle school girls were sharing their nude photos with 2 boys.
Ugh.
And a lawsuit came into play because one kid then threatened the girl to, hey, either give me, sexually pleasure me in the bathroom, or I'm going to send your images, out to people. And so when that went down, I was somehow the expert in the area. And then news, of course, came involved. And I was really starting to have conversations of teaching kids, how to use their devices, and became the expert very, very quickly on this topic. And our nonprofit, it was called I Can Help at first. It was just kind of a call to action. It's been around for 10 years. In the past year, we've legally changed it over Digital for Good because we had an event called Digital for Good Summit to recognize students who are using Digital for Good. So when companies kept asking us, what do you help with? What do you help with? We're like, finally, we just said, well, we help make Digital for Good. And so then that just kind of stuck. And then we now have 3 pillars of I Can Help underneath Digital for Good. Of I Can Help Educate, which is our curriculum courses and trainings. I Can Help Engage, which is, active positive change. And then now we've changed it to I Can Help Empower, which is empowering the students, the mentors, different people to be able to help, right? Empower them to want to help make Digital for Good.
I love the fact that this is a collaborative effort between adults like ourselves and student interns, and it's student driven, and the age range is quite dynamic. And did that on board right away? Was it a collaborative or multi-generational structure to begin with, or was it something that grew with the development of I Can Help / Change for Good?
You know what? Thank you for asking that because honestly, a lot of people don't realize that's the probably our most powerful tool is that we have students on board and that we have adults, working side by side with students on this is a huge problem. I mean, the online activity of issues, everything from digital safety, citizenship, literacy, and wellness, it's a big problem and it's a big issue. And at first, it was only students coming to us with problems when we first started it because they're the ones who saw it and felt it. And adults always, whenever they see those kind of problems, they just want to sweep things underneath the rug,
Hmm.
almost.
Yeah.
And they were just like, I'm not seeing that. I'm not feeling it. Look, of course, you're not living that. You're not living your awkward middle school ages. Like you've already survived that. But now, then once COVID hit, that's definitely when they saw it and felt it
Mm,
themselves.
mm,
And then that's when the shift started coming, where we started getting people like our mentors, like, well, you're going to be talking with Amber and these different mentors that come in because they're starting to say like, oh yeah, we need to start helping with this. This is a problem, right?
hmm.
And so we definitely grew massively. So we have mentors that come in and support these students with it because I feel as an adult, we shouldn't be in front of students knowing more than them with this, and we should definitely shouldn't be behind them knowing less. And I think that's where a lot of the issues are is that we're behind them knowing less because they're the first ones to the scene when they see this stuff, the trends that are happening. And so they're the ones who need to be part of the solution. And we can't have the students just being part of the solution by themselves. The adults need to help them with that because it is heavy stuff. Everything from school shooters to, like now they're making AI pictures of nudes of girls, like, using AI to do those things. And that's heavy stuff that a student can't do that by themselves. They need adults. But unfortunately, students don't go to adults because the whole snitches get stitches mentality.
Mm.
They're afraid that devices are going to get taken away. And so it is really making students feel comfortable coming to adults.
That's terrible that there's an inhibition in trying to for self-preservation and for trying to look out for yourself or others that you are advocating for. And one thing I love about having gone to your website multiple times to do my research is
Mhm.
that there is so much education packages and systems put together for both students and adults. And I love what you said a moment ago because I am, as I said before we hit record, I'm 54. I'm totally ignorant
Yeah.
about what it is like to be. I remember being an awkward middle schooler, and I can
Yeah.
remember some of the drama, and there were bullies
Hmm.
and yada yada. But knowing that this is amplified by an electronic device that basically gives you access to the world, with some exceptions. That only can just the dynamic of that, is mind-boggling to me that I would have to contend with that on top of just that tough period of 12 to 14 to
Surviving. Yeah.
16. Yeah, just the normal adversity that's
Hmm.
and so I try to empathize that and I think, oh my gosh. And that's again where what you all are doing is equipping people to have a means to sort of counteract the shadow side or the antisocial
Yeah.
aspect of what has been wrought for us by the lords of technology and things like that, the Promethean fire that came down, or however you want to look at that. Um, can you talk to us about some of your educational packages and
Hmm.
resources that you have available, again, in a scaling from age 12 or whatever to adulthood? Can we cover some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's the big thing that's different about us and from being a teacher, I was seeing there is free stuff out there, but it really is just teaching them about safe passwords and
Mm,
uh what's the other one? Like definitely about the digital literacy. But what they're not teaching them is that when there is a fake page on you, how do you get that taken down, right?
mm,
Or on your peer, because there's so many fake pages out there, and there's so many fight pages, and there's just all this crazy stuff. And
mm,
so what makes us separate from a lot of these nonprofits is that we are really empowering students and parents and educators to like thrive in this digital world, right? It's like, how do you thrive in it? Because it's getting them to be digital first responders, as we call it.
yeah.
They're the first ones to the scene, to report it, to help take it down, right? That people can start learning how to treat people, that kind of a thing. So
Hmm.
with our packages, our original way of starting it was I would go out to schools and I would do an all school presentation, getting them, and it was all super engaging, super fun, like where they get to use their phones, right? Because I'm a big believer of like, this is a tool. Like this is a really
Hmm.
cool tool. I use it on a regular daily basis on a lot of fun things. Like it can just needs to be taught how to use it for good.
Hmm.
And so we're doing fun activities where they get to be able to have it. And for example, I'll make them do like what we call a photo roulette, right? And so they have to like swipe, and then when I say stop, they land on a picture and they pop it open and they have to explain themselves. Like this is me at a conference, at a dance, like at the end of the conference, right?
Okay.
So
Uh-huh.
now it's a fun conversation with your kid, and then now you get to swipe up, and this is now talking about a digital footprint.
Mm.
Like everything, every picture is time dated, logged, and located. And you can delete this picture, but it's not actually gone. It goes to recently deleted photos. And if I delete it from there, it goes to the Google, Google Cloud, right? And it's even though you delete it from there, it's still in this device. You're just not meant to see on the surface. And a
Okay.
lot of students don't understand that. So when an investigation goes down, if a cop has to get involved, they don't understand like, oh, the cops can actually pull this back up, right?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what we're doing is we do a school presentation, get them on the same page, have fun with it, laugh about things, and then have it as a call to action of like, hey, how can you help? Like, what are you going to do? Right? I
Hmm.
can't force them to go put their accounts on private. Like, I'm not going to even be a hypocrite. My account's on public. I'm a public speaker. I need people to come find my social media, right? And
Right.
I think that's where it gets confusing for students. But what I can do is I can say, like, if you get targeted, you should be putting your account on private to like get your power back. And then when you
Yeah.
feel like you're not going to get attacked, then open it back up, because that's what I've had to do. So you're making it realistic, and you're basically telling them like these are all the things you can do. I know you're not going to do all of them because you're a teenager and you want to go live life and be a little
Yeah.
crazy, right? So
Right.
that's one of that's kind of how we first started. And then how do you get more people, because it was becoming a problem everywhere. So now our new package is definitely we're doing a train the trainer model. So I was just, when we were out at Digital for Good in New York at Google, I went to a school district called Somersville. They brought in all their schools from their district into one school. We train certain amount of students and staff on our 4 PowerPoints: safety, citizenship, literacy, and wellness, so that they can go in the curriculum and they can go back to their schools to train this with the students, because all of our stuff is made by students for students, and
Okay.
it's meant to be peer to peer with the support of the teachers, right? Of the things that they're working side by side with them. They're not just sitting on their computer grading while the kid is presenting. Like they need to be with them
Okay.
because it's like asking the right questions and learning from them. So that's now our new package, because now we can hit more people. And then we do have virtual sessions. So we even have a parent course, because parents have got to get involved. Like they need to know, if you want to know who your kid hangs out with in real life, you should also know who your kid is hanging out with online. And
Hmm.
I think that's a big piece. And so they're following these fake accounts, and it's like a lot of parents don't know that. So we have a parent course. We have even for like law enforcement to learn about, what they can do to build trust with students, to get them to start telling them about what's going online. So we have different packages that has those different ways to get educated on how to use digital for good.
Okay. You mentioned Google and the Digital for Good Summit in New York a
Mhm.
couple few weeks ago, and it brings me to wonder, or it prompts me to wonder what is going on the other side of the lens with social media, digital giants like Google, et
Yeah.
cetera. And we have machine learning now and all these things. And so my little gears are spinning, and I'm thinking, well, how do we
Yeah.
safeguard and how do we try to remediate or moderate these fake account generation
Mhm.
scenarios and things like that, and safeguarding the people who would benefit from being looked after in that sense.
Mhm.
Are you in relationship with them, or are you getting any kind of downward response from them as far as what they're doing? And I'm sure they are, but I mean,
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we pride ourselves on too, is that we have partnerships with the big companies, right?
hmm.
Because they like us, because we really believe it's not just their responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility to make digital for good, right? It shouldn't just be the big tech giants to be in charge of this. This is a problem from everybody. right? And is there things that they need to do? Absolutely. There's a lot of things that they need to do, and they're actually getting sued, right? If you've seen the news, they're all getting sued, all the big tech giants, because they're not keeping our youth safe. And until we get some policy set up, like that's the hard part. There is no policy saying they have to get IDs, like, to be able to, hey, check that they're 13. How do you actually check that? Because
Yeah.
all they have to do is say, yes, I'm 13 and lie about it. So there's no
Right.
ID to be able to check their ID, right? So like it's really hard. So these tech companies are like, well, we're doing what we can, but we also need policy to be able to force it, because
Mm-hmm.
we need to enforce, because then people are like, well, freedom of speech. Like, I don't want my kids, identity. Like, yeah. So there needs to be a law so that they actually say, like, we have to follow this for this reason, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it is very interesting on that end. So they are getting forward. So we have a lot of conversations with them. We usually go to them with a problem. Like, for example, I just went to Snap a couple weeks ago. A school reached out. They're having a massive issue with a community. So whenever there is a big population of people, so high school being one of them, there's a lot of people, it automatically Snap automatically makes it into a community. So it'd be called that high school's name. Well, what was happening was all these students were going into that community, and so now they're posting things that are definitely inappropriate, thinking the school was sanctioning it. It's not the school, it was Snapchat, but it just automatically does that.
Mm.
So going back to Snap, telling this is the problem, they go, oh, we know there's a problem. Here's what you can go back and tell your school. So then they told us the steps of basically how to turn that off and what you can do if it is a problem. But I get why they're doing it. Like, it's a neat thing if people are using it for the right reasons, but there's just always some people who are jerks and they don't use it for the right reason.
Mm.
And Snap is trying to fix that and kind of tolerate it. So yeah, every one of these companies, we've built relationships that they send us the kind of stuff. Google, what they were focused on this past year was, instead of what do you call that? Instead of filtering things out, they make it now blurred, because they were having companies complain. Like, I get it. Like, I don't know. Well, since your audience is adults, like sex toys, right? So they're
Right.
filtering that out. Well, then that made companies mad, because now these sex toy industries are like, hey,
They're not
that's
getting
how we're
their
making our money.
right.
You can't
Right.
filter us out. So now it's like, okay, we need to blur it so that
Mm-hmm.
they can't see it. And you can choose to make it filtered out completely. You can also choose to not have it blurred out, right?
Okay.
So they're changing that. So that's kind of what the engineers with Google did, but they had to had to walk through that process, because Americans are messy people, or not just Americans, sorry, humans. Humans are
Yeah. Well,
messy,
we could start with
right?
us, and then
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
yeah.
Anybody else wants to
Build
jump
up.
in, they can. Yeah.
But it is like, humans are messy. And
Yeah.
so these companies are trying to fix when humans are like, oh, here's how I could break this, and here's how I could alter this. And then that's
Yeah.
when these tech companies have to quickly so now AI is one of those things that they're trying to figure out. Like, AI has been around for a really long time, but people are just figuring out how to manipulate it and change
Right.
it and alter it for evil and not for good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where now these tech giants are having to realize, like, we need to shift things, we need to change things. And so where we come into play is we want to be at the table with our students, so that we as educators and as students and even as parents can say, this is what we're having problems with, so that they can, and then here's our ideas, so we can be part of the solution and not just being a part of the problem.
I know some of the philosophers that I follow ask these kind of questions about what AI brings, and like everything, there's a duality, and as I mentioned, there's a shadowy thing or an antisocial thing, and they call it sort of the alignment problem with how do we relate with artificial intelligence, and how is it employed. And that's a huge there's in game theory, there's something called Moloch's dilemma, the Malachian dilemma. It's like you want something good, you have to have a sacrifice associated with it. And it's
Right.
like, wow, that's another big problem for the ages. And I just derailed my next question for you by going off on a tangent. I guess what I would, you know what, when we were talking about legislation, let me get your thoughts. I live in Florida, and so Florida was doing this kind of thing that's probably
Yeah.
more headline grabbing than anything, and it's, no more social media for whatever it was, 14. My immediate, I sort of looked at it through a libertarian lens, and I'm like, these kids are going to figure out how to just fudge things, or, I mean, so how does that even
Hmm.
look, in terms of,
Hmm.
Do you think that has a future? Do you think that's part of it, or do you think that's just not effective? It's more just politicians trying to, rhetorically score
I think
points
they're
or
trying,
whatever.
yeah. I think politicians are trying to find answers for sure. I mean, just look at it. I mean, the best example I can tell you is two of them is especially did prohibition work, right?
Yeah, right,
Prohibition did
right.
not work.
Yeah. Again, that's the libertarian in me. It's like,
Yeah,
it's not
that
going to
didn't
work.
work. That
Yeah,
totally backfired, right?
yeah,
And then you look at even abstinence, like
yeah,
abstinence didn't work either.
yeah.
And I think that's interesting too. If you actually look at it, everyone's so focused on the social media aspect, but if you actually look, teenage pregnancy is down. Even drugs and alcohol of teenagers are actually down.
Mm,
Unfortunately, the mental health stuff is up because
yeah.
there's so many new things that are going on this that makes anxiety go up, right? I mean, even thinking of it from you, have you ever sent a text message to the wrong person?
Hmm.
It made your anxiety go up, right?
Well, no, it made me laugh because I thought I was talking to my wife, but I was talking to a buddy of mine. I sent it,
Yeah, but
yeah,
it
and
could
he's like,
stress
I
you out
think
if
you.
it's definitely, yeah, if it's something
Oh,
super inappropriate or,
I
like,
get, yeah,
oh, that's so embarrassing, right? Especially to a
right,
boss or,
yeah. My
so
faux
anxiety
pas
goes
was
up.
innocent, so yeah, I can
Yeah, that's,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah,
Then you can laugh about it. I usually
right.
can laugh about them too,
But
but
I
it's
can
at the same time.
imagine,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be horrifying.
And then anxiety can go up if you can get chat and you're like, who's even in here? Right. You're like, I don't even know
Hmm.
whose number this is. So
Okay.
anxiety has gone up. There's so many awkward situations, even when your
Hmm.
phone's about to die, right? Like people's anxiety goes up. So people just don't, we're still figuring out how to live in this world with this. I think same thing with cars, right? Like when cars came in, like so many deaths were happening with cars, and we are still trying to figure out how can we decrease, drinking and driving, how can we decrease car accident, like how do we decrease that? So I will give you an example too of where they've eliminated it. Some states have chosen to eliminate Pornhub, and
Hmm.
people are and adults are still figuring out how to find
To
Pornhub.
go
So even
around,
though,
yeah.
so even though it's eliminated in Montana, guess what state has the highest Pornhub rate?
Yeah, right, right.
It still
Well,
is Montana. It's totally, you're not supposed to be able to pull up Pornhub in Montana, and
okay.
it's still the highest rate of use of Pornhub.
Yeah, thanks to VPNs and things like that, so you can skirt around that stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree that that kind of thinking is not innovative enough, nor is it effective enough to substantiate any kind of
Hmm.
positive affect or change or anything. Um, one big question I want to ask you is, and I'm sure this is going on with you guys, but what can psychologists and mental health workers do for your organization and more broadly for this the species of problem, this particular scenario? You've in extracting what I and from our conversation that children, if they abstain from whatever it is they're doing, the social media sites and stuff, that they'll feel left out. They won't feel part of the social group, or if they get bullied and harassed, and anxiety and depression goes up, suicidal ideation or whatever goes up. So what is that mental health care system saying, or how are they engaging with either you or more broadly in being sort of frontline workers on this kind of matter, on this matter
Yeah,
rather?
yeah, because social media is very much connected to the mental health issues that
Yeah.
going on. And again, we need to educate them. I mean, it comes down to education. Like I just don't feel like we basically threw this big tool in everyone's hands and never actually taught them how to use it and use it right. And so even us adults are not doing a great job with it. Like we're addicted to it. This is an addiction.
Hmm.
There's people who are now going, like their rehab facilities actually have now addiction places for phone
Okay.
usage, which is very interesting.
Hmm.
I'm actually teaming up with an ER doctor. Him and I are making a brochure to have in the hospitals, to talk about digital literacy, because everyone thinks they know everything before they go in because they can go online and try to find something. It's making the medicals stuff takes them longer because these people think they know everything since they looked online. And they're like, but this is what it's saying. And then it's making their anxieties go up, right? So that'll be one brochure is about digital literacy. So if anybody wants to help us with this project, it's a big project, but it's needed, right? And to be able to,
Hmm.
while you're sitting in the hospital. And then the second one is about digital wellness, because when you aren't feeling good, right, mentally or even physically, you should be decreasing your time on your device and, reflecting on what you're looking at, because I guarantee you, election year's coming up. And everyone always, their mental health definitely, because they get so upset about what people are saying. And
Hmm.
so it's like you need to limit how much you actually are watching of the news, because the news is like the stories that get told are always the negative stuff, because
Yeah.
that's what gets the best attention. And so that's hard for some people to absorb that much. There's
Hmm.
everyone's built differently. I always compare it to eating. I love going to buffets. I love to eat, and I can
Yeah.
eat a lot, and I can consume a lot. But my friends, they don't. They're definitely, they can't consume as much. So same thing goes with these devices. Some people can consume a lot of negative stuff, and it doesn't really affect them. But other people, they consume it. It's like, they're it mentally that messes them up. So I think I think your friends need to, anyone who's listening needs to get out there and educate. It needs to have conversations with other adults, that we need to do a better job of educating and empowering our youth and even our adults on this. We have parents presentations. We went to from night events, even virtual events. Numbers aren't there because I get it. Parents are just stressed out too. They're emotionally unavailable because now you have two family incomes, like having to work full time. We used to not have to have that.
Hmm.
So it's getting people educated on it and having those conversations. And so now we've been switching to a new model where we've been doing lunch dates. So they come in. I've done it in person, but I'm making it as a video course where the school can have the parents come and sit with their kid, and then they have a conversation with their kid with their phone, and I walk them through some activities they can do with their phone to laugh and have fun with, and how to even bring this conversation up, right? Because they're blocking friends and thinking it's a joke, like, I'm mad at you, so I'm going to block you, and then I'll convince five of my other friends to block you too, and now you're isolated, right? And
Hmm.
so we're teaching them really bad behaviors, and then now they're breaking up with people over text. And would you want your kid to break up with somebody over text message, or is that something you do face to face? And we
Yeah.
could only do this if we start educating and empowering them on how to handle these awkward situations, is what it comes down to.
This may be an incredibly naive question due to my age, but
No.
I'm going to ask it anyway because maybe
Yes.
somebody else might
Love
be
it.
thinking it. Well, and I've touched on this already. It's like I'm so disconnected from this dilemma.
Yeah.
Now, I will confess I'm a YouTube junkie. I probably spend 2 hours. I don't watch television anymore. For my personal handheld device, I use it to text mostly my wife, and then I take pictures when I'm out at work because I'm out in nature all
Mhm.
the time, flowers, and so I really don't use my device except for looking things up on Google occasionally. But so to get to a point, is there an effort being made for whether it's you all or more broadly again, do you think there's of movement trying to sort of rewild that generation, the young ones, and to say, okay, there's a time for being, in your online presence, and then there's a time maybe to actually go and congregate like you said, to break up with somebody in person or
Yeah.
to congregate with people in person. Are there efforts being made to sort of tamp down the amount of time that's being spent on the devices versus like again 40 years ago when I was a kid, being out there getting dirty and mingling with real fleshy people, things like that, real live folks that you can.
Sure.
So anyway, it's a very naive question
Yeah,
because I
it
I can only
is.
lens it the way I remember or I currently live
Sure.
too. Yeah. So
Mhm.
anyway.
Yeah, a dream world. I mean, that would be such an ideal thing, but I think it
Mm,
goes back to, we need policy. We need some kind
okay.
of a policy around that, because it'll then eliminate. They can basically say like, hey, the social media companies need to ID anytime anybody's using their, to make sure they confirm that they are 13 to be on their,
Hmm.
on their platforms. That way they can, legally say we need some kind of ID to show that you are 13. But no, 13 has an ID, right? So we'd have to figure that piece out. So there needs to be some kind of a policy on that end. And then again, it goes back to education. So a lot more states are adapting some kind of laws that a lot of times I'm seeing it where it's written where seventh and eighth graders have to have 1 hour of digital literacy, which
Mm,
1 hour is not very much,
right.
like on that piece. And it's not including digital wellness. So that doesn't talk, they're not getting forced to talk about how much time. So then it goes then now to your medical practice of trying to again, we're trying to team up with now hospitals to then it needs to be part of the medical hospitals, because what's happening is that they are getting uh, suggested to go into a rehab facility to eliminate the addiction, but we want to get to the point where they're not addicted so much that they have to go to a rehab facility.
Yeah.
So, and that goes then to education, and even goes back to policy. If it's a state policy that you have to have education around digital wellness.
Mm-hmm. And if we're framing this in an addiction slash substance use
Mm-hmm.
disorder scenario, that again resonates with my query that, like if, and I did drugs when I was younger and I drank and all that kind of stuff. I don't really do any of that anymore, but, removal and abstinence, was one, means to not, continue with that pattern. So again, in my naivete, I think, that would be really neat if there was a way to impress upon the users of social content who are young and still, capable of maybe, being impressed to carry on in a particular way, that might be a wonderful way to, and again, it could be incredibly naive, and everybody out there who's under 30 is like, yeah, right, dude. So in other words, the rewilding idea that
Yeah,
put your device down and go play and be, the way, for hundreds of generations that we did things. And I could be overselling the idea that, they're spending so much time. But if we are talking to the
yeah.
level of addiction, that
It's
that abstinence frame might.
But then it goes back to, I think, again, why we're really trying to push for parents this year
Right.
is because parents are using it. We need to
Oh, yeah.
rewire parents because
Yeah.
parents are using it. This is a babysitter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you have to rewire parenting. Then that's why you have to go back to policy, because the only way you're going to get parents to realize like this, we're serious, is it's a policy. This is not okay. Like
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
can only have so much time. So it's a rewiring, because there's so many parents who just misuse it and give it to their kids and say
Mhm.
they can have as much time. So if you're that parent who's like, yep, get outside with it, and or get outside, it's hard because now they're going back and saying, well, why are you making me do this when everybody
Yeah.
else is not, right? That their
Yeah.
parents allow them to do this.
Yeah.
So it's a rewiring, not just the kid, it's the rewiring of the parenting.
Have you heard good conversations or ideas being kicked around what good policy would look like? And what can the state do, or
Yeah.
municipalities do, or whatever, to try to help with the steering and with
Hmm.
the, intervention?
Yeah, England and London and France are definitely leading the way in this. They're really definitely pushing that forward, and it is around, they're really focusing on the child safety
Hmm.
laws and protection laws. And so it is going back to uh, having some kind of an age of like the requirement and actually showing of ID. If it's also what France is doing is if an influencer is posting something that is going to make someone react a certain way, they're liable for that behavior.
Okay.
So that's something that France is doing, which I think that's really powerful, because there is so much research that's showing that in the United States, the same thing is happening. These influencers are posting on their things, and it's influencing a whole bunch groups of people go into a certain tirade, right? And
Hmm.
follow certain things. So
Okay.
that's what France has been doing. I don't ever know if that will ever sway here in the US, but
Right.
it's very
Right.
interesting to follow. And that way it's a thought. And I think we can take what they're doing and how they're framing it. And I think we can do something similar to make it fit better to what we can do in our country.
And I think there's maybe 2 points that could be tied together here, because you mentioned earlier litigation with regard to the social media companies, and now litigation with somebody who's an influencer who's, maybe made some things, deleterious comments that could, have negative impact. I wonder, because again, in America, we have this synthesis of state and market, and enterprise. It's sort of a corporate relationship with our government, and, if those social media companies feel, a heavy heat or a strong pressure coming down on them in the by way of litigation and lawsuits and so forth, I wonder if that will impact how, lobbying money is allocated, and how the narrative will be, worked out with legislators. And I'm not trying to say that in a cynical, sarcastic way, but I think it's kind of part of a reality that, Silicon Valley or whatever, whoever whatever we want to call the pars pro toto of all these people that do this, generate social media. If they will, correct course by way of that kind of pressure, not from the state so much, but again from
Mhm.
consumer pushback through overzealous attorneys who want to get their fees and so forth. So does that land with you at all? Do you think that might be one means for the glacial shift to trajectory to move,
I,
here
yeah,
in the US, we're
the
different.
comp I think that, yeah, and I think that companies, they can't make a decision. They can't be the ones who make the decisions. They have to wait until it is a policy, because if they change anything on the safety side of things on their platform, someone's just going to come back at them saying freedom of speech,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Freedom of, like, all these different things. They're like freedom of this and freedom of that. And so they then get attacked, and then they're like, we're going to leave your platform. There's competition in safety with these tech companies. There's no,
okay.
they all copy each other. If you
Mm,
take, they actually meet together. I've been on the calls, they meet together because what, like, there's no, you can't be competitive in the marketing side of things and selling of things in safety. Safety is safety.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
they're just waiting for the politicians to pull, like, what is it you want us to follow? And I don't understand why this is so difficult, because when TV came out, there were so many laws around TV. Before you could
yeah,
even open up the TV channels, they had to say, like, there's no beer commercials and no tobacco commercials during the kid programming,
yeah,
right? Like, that was
yeah,
like, that was a very easy
yeah.
thing to be able to do. But we made no policies and no rules when when the World Wide Web opened up. Like, there was
Mm,
nothing. And it's very weird because the radio, I mean, look at TV and radio. There's certain, you can't use certain swear words.
right, right.
And now they've opened up those kind of swear words, right? But just like World Wide Web is just open, like anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so there needs to be a policy. Like, why does TV and radio have it, but the World Wide Web doesn't?
Yeah, yeah. And again, that you'll hear the arguments, well, it's an egalitarian exercise and free thought and the commons and all that kind of stuff. And I agree with you though, and I wonder if the FCC is have their hands or things on the table for this, or if there could be an administration similar to the FCC that specifically deals with what the interwebs has become, and say, in some way, and I'm not bright enough to figure this out, but how there can be regulation, but still have that spirit. And we've seen things, I think, in the last few years where there was an attempt by Congress to regulate the internet and this and that, and there was a lot of pushback again from a kind
Yeah.
of libertarian lens of don't tread on our stuff that we do on the internet. But there has to be some guardrails, I think, and especially again and as you've said, AI's been around, or machine learning's been around
Hmm.
for a while, but I think it's
Hmm.
going to be more pervasive, and it's going to show up more and more. And that's if we don't address this, if the market sector is hamstrung and can't address this, then maybe it will be. And I'd love to see collaborative again. I'd love to see the
Yeah.
state and the market system, specifically that sector, work on that,
Work on it
because
together. Hmm.
yeah, because that's one link in this chain, or spoke in the wheel or whatever, that's going to help with us having generations of people coming on board who will be the adults of the future. And I want, for my own selfish reasons, somebody who will be old and decrepit in another 20 or 30 years. I want healthy minded people who are functional and
Yeah.
competent to run the world, and maybe care for me when I'm senile and I can't, take care
Yeah.
of myself. So yeah, I mean, so many implications in the seeming simplicity of children behaving badly on the internet, or in social media, and the reverberance of that is just staggering. Um, but to be continued, I guess. I would like to check in with you and see if there's some ideas and thoughts you'd like to get out, to the public, to the people who are watching this video, that we may not have covered in this conversation, and so that there's a completeness to to what we did
Yeah,
today.
sure. Well, I
So
think the biggest one is, I mean, our company was called I Can Help, and it still is our pillars. Is everybody in here can help. This is a big problem. And so there's so many ways that you guys can help if you want to get involved. Please take a look at our website at icanhelp.net, because you can be a mentor to these students. They need thought leaders, because they're the ones who are posting on our social media, I Can Help Official, about, posts that just talks about everything from digital, what we've been talking about, digital wellness, citizenship, literacy, and safety. And they're making it cool, right? Like, they're
mm,
trying to make it like the conversation cool, and like showing where we have these kind of things. So you can be a mentor, you can also be a sponsor. We're looking for, sponsors that want to support us that way, or even a partner. There's different ways you can partner with us, and we're looking for people on our steering committee and board, because it's constantly, this is a big task, and how do you, but eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so the more people we can have this conversation, we're teaming up with a lot more people who have webinars that can, have this conversation if they've got work that supports what we're doing, so we can get their thoughts and viewpoints and different things to get it out to our educators and get them trained, and even parents or even the students. So I'd love to be able to get more people involved, because we need to work side by side with students. We have a lot of students, and we need more adults that come join us and make this a powerful mission and make it happen.
Yeah. Amen. And if I didn't say this already, there will be links down in the description field for you to go to icanhelp.net and discover more. And again, it's a wonderful website. There's ways to be active and involved, and as Kim just said, to sit down at the table and participate and help, because this is a community project. I mean, I tend to look as a kind of collectivist, it's like
Yeah.
what we do to each other, it reverberates and it affects us. And I am so concerned for younger people, not in a fearful, worrying kind of way, but more that, again, I'm on the outside. I'm from another time, and I hate to say that because I'm not that old, but it's like in this matter, I am an outsider looking in, and I would love to see this project of yours and the system that you've developed flourish and have good affect where it's needed. So I will. And to the audience, this either may be a part one of my series, or this may be a composite interview. I will have a couple more guests from this project coming on, and I'll make that a surprise. So it'll either be amended to this conversation in a few moments, or it'll be a part two. But well, Kim, I can't thank you enough for what you and your team are doing, and all of the interns and collaborators, and hopefully more people will be coming on board, and this will grow in volume and make a difference in the world. I think this is essential.
Love it. Thank you
There's
so much, Justin, for having us. I'm so glad with this connection, and I'll make sure I tell Anvita that she's still a rock star. So you're amazing.
Yeah, Anvita. And so that's one of our guests that'll be coming up. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking to them because again, I'll be getting more involved with where the action is in that generation and that mind of that generation, so they can
Yep.
speak from that perspective. And I'm looking forward to that. So
Love it.
all right, Kim, thank you so much. And you're always welcome to come back. Maybe
Yeah.
new things will be coming up, and my platform is your platform,
Love it.
because
Love
I
it.
really believe in what you guys are doing, and I really am committed to doing whatever I can in my little way to help. So I will say
Appreciate you.
goodbye to you after we stop the record. But to the YouTube audience, this is either goodbye for part one of an interview, or just hold on a second, and there'll be an amendment coming up in just a second. So thank you though for your time and attention, and please go down and check it out, and see what's down in the description field for you to discover. So bye for now. So.